Hey there, everyone. Welcome to yet another Teach Kevin Your Thing session. This session, I'm really excited because I'm going to be learning how to build mobile apps with Vue and Ionic from Mike Hartington. How you doing, Mike?
Woo! I'm doing well. Happy to be here. Excited to be teaching you some stuff today and
Mhm.
going over all things Ionic. Even wore
Yeah.
the appropriate
Ooh.
the
Oh,
appropriate
yeah.
attire today to make sure I'm representing.
Yeah, yeah. You are representing really well. You're on brand. I love it. So, ooh, with a mug of like that's an Ionic mug,
Wi-
right? Mm-hmm.
yeah, that is an Ionic mug. It's a nice little gift I got from visiting the Ionic HQ.
Oh, awesome stuff. That's great. So yeah, I'm excited for a couple of reasons, but we're going to get into that. But before that, can you please introduce yourself? Like, tell us who Mike is, what you've been doing, what you currently do, and anything you're willing to share.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my name's Mike Hartington. I work at Ionic. I am head of our developer relations teams, meaning I make sure that we are helping people be successful with Ionic, but also know how to build cool stuff. Um, I've been coding for probably like 10 years, close to 10 years now. I build guitars in my free time. So yeah, that's basically who I am.
Hold up. Did you say build guitars in your free time?
I did.
Oh my god. If you play, that would be cool, but you build.
Oh no,
That's
I play, but this is
okay.
one I built recently.
Oh, you play and you build.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
one of those things
mm-hmm.
where what I wanted
Yeah.
um, didn't. It existed, but not 100% what I wanted. So I was like, I could build that and it'd be fine. And
Of
then,
course.
you know, as most projects start, you realize, oh, this is a big time sink, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's cool, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, you just took the typical developer routes. I want something, it doesn't exist the way I want it. I'm just gonna go build it. Like it's I love it, really. I
I
really
I
love it.
haven't thought of it like that, but now that you say that, it makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a developer thing. I know we like building stuff, but that's really like that's interesting stuff you got going on. But you say you've been doing web development or software engineering for at least a decade now. That's such a long time. So what I really want to talk about is what got you interested with Ionic? And first of all, just for sanity check, so that we don't make any assumptions that people know what Ionic. Of course, they should know, but can you just give us a rundown? Like, what is Ionic? What's the Ionic story? I always like a good why. So, what is Ionic? Why do we need Ionic? And what got you interested in Ionic that you currently work there?
Yeah, so Ionic is a platform for building mobile apps using web technologies. We give you a collection of components, a native runtime. Basically, we give you all of the things that you would typically get from a native SDK, but just built with the web.
Okay.
Kind of the reason why this stuff existed is years ago at the time, UI libraries built specifically for mobile weren't that great. jQuery Mobile was like one of the biggest ones of the day, and that was, it was great for its time, but it also wasn't great because there was so much um, in there to support legacy browsers, and we didn't want to have to maintain work with that and then have to deal with jQuery at the same time. So we ended up building our own component library that was, um, at the time, based around AngularJS. It encapsulated all these components, and it was really good. And we rode the Angular kind of train for a little bit. Um, Supported Angular when it upgraded to its newer versions. But around our 4.0 release, we were like, hey, there's other great frameworks out there as well. And we have people who want to use those frameworks with Ionic. So what if we went framework agnostic and shipped everything as web components?
Mm.
So we rewrote all of Ionic as web components using just the using a little compiler that we wrote to help author web components.
Yeah.
um, and it turned out to be really good. We ended up support for Angular, React, and in this case, what we're going to be looking at today is Vue. So you have your choice of frameworks, you have your choice of build tools, things that come with the frameworks,
Mm-hmm.
and then Ionic is just your UI layer that sits in there and makes your app look
Mm.
appropriate for mobile.
Cool stuff. So again, there was a problem. So I think the Ionic team sort of like I don't know who caught the bug where something existed which were jQuery mobile, but it didn't really like work the way you wanted. And then we have Ionic now. We started with Angular. Then fast forward, like wanted to make it framework agnostic. Then you go web components, which is amazing. I really love tooling that lets you bring your own framework because it removes a lot of learning curve from it because as a Vue developer myself, knowing that I could use Ionic and Vue, I already feel almost confident that the experience in terms of DX is going to be great because of course I already know Vue. You just have to know how they work together. So speaking about how they work together though, right? So for a while, I think this should be like back 2019, 2020. I was really skeptical about cross-platform solutions to building mobile apps because I had a sort of like a rough experience with React Native and some other tech. Back then, the DX wasn't really good. So I'm really interested in seeing what has changed from that time. I tried like a cross-platform solution and see. So what makes Ionic different from the other? So like I said, React Native, for example, because you said we could also use Ionic and React. So what is the difference between Ionic and other solutions that make you build cross-platform stuff with web technologies?
Yeah, I think the main thing that
Mm-hmm.
stands out for us is as you're building your app, you are using the most familiar like technology for web developers,
Okay.
HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? And
Yes.
the building blocks of what you're building with, it's not oh, it's like HTML. Oh, it's like a paragraph tag. No, it
Mm-hmm.
is a paragraph tag, some highly styled components
Mm-hmm.
that look and behave exactly like their native counterparts.
Yeah.
But as a developer, I'm still just using web technologies.
Mm.
When I go to deploy to my mobile device, it's still the same DOM tree, the same CSS that I'm used to writing with.
Mm.
And I know how to debug this. I know where my performance profiling begins.
Yeah.
And if I want to use like a charting library or a rich text editor library, all of that stuff can be just pulled in from whatever is available on npm. So I could reach for C3 for my charts. I could reach for Quill.js for my rich text editing. Any of the various libraries that exist out there can already be used in here, and I'm not having to um, find one. Okay, well, this one works for iOS. This one
Mm.
works for Android. Now I
Yeah.
have to have some platform specific packages installed. That kind of goes away. You're just using whatever is available for the web platform.
Mm. That's really interesting because you touched on a point that really got me interested in Vue because with Vue you sort of build on top of the HTML you already know, right? Like it is HTML and they just add some syntax on top of it. But the idea is based on the core web fundamentals. As since you mentioned, we'll still be using HTML. It's not looking like HTML. It is HTML, and the CSS and everything. That makes a lot of sense. But you did mention something also, which is performance, and that's my next question. So I don't want to assume. So like I like to hear from you. Does Ionic compile to native code, or is this sort of like a web view thing going on?
It is a web view, but
Okay.
I would argue that it's not like if you've done anything with a web view before in
Mm-hmm.
cross platform, it's not the same experience as like a
Mm.
Cordova, Phone Gap, or anything from like 5, 6 years ago.
Okay.
This is a very, very optimized web browser and web runtime that
Mm-hmm.
will be available right away. There's no like waiting for the device ready or connected lifecycle hook to fire. As
Mm-hmm.
soon as the app starts up, your web app is ready to go, rendered, and it still has access to the
Yeah.
native APIs through JavaScript. Yeah, so like the performance is of that web view is super optimized for this use case.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the codes to all the like calls to say the Bluetooth API or the file
Mm-hmm.
system API, those are all optimized to work super fast and return the results as soon as they are ready. In fact, we have a really nice blog post that we basically compared the same app written in React Native and in Ionic, and in this case, it was in React, so we could have kind
Yeah.
of a
Sure.
little bit more concise comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the React Ionic React app basically is the same performance as React Native,
Mm.
so there is no difference between the two platforms.
Yeah. That's yeah. Because as expected, I know the web technologies and all these tools would have improved over time because, like I said, I have this idea of cross-platform technologies like maybe 5 years ago. So yeah, I'm really excited that you mentioned that the performance would, even though it's a web view, it's not even a bad thing because I think I read a post where there's like an argument where your team will move faster if you use this sort of cross-platform technology to just build your mobile apps and also your web apps because you're just using core web technologies anyways and also your UI framework and the trade-offs are not really that much anymore and yeah, lastly before we get into the code, what sort of apps are you seeing being built out there with Ionic and any other framework? Because with one cool use case I've seen where the apps really works really well is like the Basecamp app. Do you know Basecamp? Like, yeah, I
Yep.
know it's a lot of web viewing there. It's not native, and even the Hey app from also the Seven Signals. There's a lot of web viewing there, and you wouldn't even know because the app is good, the experience is good. So, what sort of apps are you seeing being built with Ionic?
So there's obviously like a huge enterprise need within Ionic. So like
Yeah,
the apps that are more or less they're trying to just load a bunch of data from a server,
yeah,
let people interact with that data,
mm-hmm.
and then modify it and make changes. Your basic kind of CRUD apps.
Yeah.
I've seen games built with Ionic. I've
Whoa.
seen these really nice 3D visualizers, which I think a couple of years ago I would have said, don't ever build a 3D app with web technologies. But it goes to show you that the browser and the web
Yeah,
platform have kind of evolved. So we're, yeah, using a 3D app using web technologies is actually
good
viable
thing.
these days.
Mm-hmm.
One of the top apps that actually is built with Ionic is this app called Sworkit. So like work it, but with an S at the front.
Okay.
Um, it is a health and fitness app based around like
Wow.
circuit workouts.
Mm-hmm.
It's been the top rated app in iOS, top rated app in Google Play,
Wow.
and it is all Ionic from the ground up.
Whoa. That is really, really amazing stuff there. Like, yeah. So I think we should, get into it right now. I think I've grilled you enough, I am satisfied. So
There
we
we
can
go.
get it. So what are we really building today? Like how do you plan on showing me the awesomeness of Ionic and Vue
Well,
together? Mm-hmm.
we're gonna kind of do I think a guided tour over the components, the basic kind of building blocks of the framework, and how you can compose that together. Maybe touch on some of the routing aspect, and then do a quick little deploy to
Mm,
a native device. So I want to touch on the native part because that's the
yeah.
thing that everyone always says. Oh, once you get to the native, it becomes really difficult, and not really.
Yeah. So
It
yeah, for
becomes a little
sure.
bit easier.
Yeah. When you mentioned the the apps that were built with Ionic, you said something about 3D, and I was blown away in a past TKYT session with Sarah Vieira. She did
Hmm.
um 3D modeling on the web with React. It was just insane how far we've come. It was as
Right.
performant as like doing it on your desktop, like with Blender. Even it was even much more faster than Blender because it's I don't know what sorcery was that.
I mean, once you get into the fact that
Yeah.
the reload cycle on
Mm-hmm.
the web is much faster than say a native, um, you're
Yeah.
already miles ahead.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, let's get into it. We've chat for like what's it, 16 minutes. So let's go. Let's build something.
All
Are
right.
you ready to share your screen now?
Yeah. Let me get my screen up here.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So
Mhm.
we're in my terminal. I'm gonna apologize. You're gonna see a lot of Vim. Once you learn how to use Vim, you
You
can't
know
use anything else.
that is true.
Um, it is a curse. But we're going to
Okay.
install our Ionic CLI. So
Okay.
Ionic ships with um, its own CLI,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a global install mostly just because we have a broader context of which we can use the CLI not only in the projects but outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so if you want to install it, you could just install it using npm install at ionic/CLI
Okay.
and then make sure that G flag is in there to make it a global. In the interest of time, though, I already have this installed. So I'm
Of
going to create an
course.
app called Ionic Start, and I'm just going to give it that. It will prompt us to use this online app wizard. I'm just going to use no because I'm
Mm,
here.
mm,
This works. And then you
mm,
notice we get a prompt to pick a framework of choice.
mm.
Angular is honestly that's my framework of choice, but I'm comfortable using any of this, so we're gonna pick Vue though,
Yes,
and then we're
that's my
gonna give it
framework of
an app
choice.
name.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, TKYT demo, just to make
Okay.
sure that we have this name properly.
Okay.
And then we get a selection of templates that we can base off of. So it could be basically a list app, which is just some random data,
Mm-hmm.
a blank app, which has our one home component and nothing else. Side menu, if you think of any app that has like a little swipe out menu on the side,
Okay.
and then tab space, which is pretty self-explanatory for like your social media apps, app store, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go with a blank one just because it's the easiest to just get up and running, and we're gonna let this do. We're gonna let this do its thing. It's gonna install some dependencies and set up some integrations. So right now, what we have it doing is get rid of that.
Mm-hmm.
But now we have it setting up. It's going to install um, this thing called capacitor. Now,
Yeah.
capacitor is our native runtime. This is how we're able to take our web app and deploy it to iOS or Android. And in fact, it's not necessarily tied to Ionic. So if you are using any UI library and any framework, you could use capacitor with it and have that just kind of work for you.
Mm.
Um, Ionic is just like the extra sauce on top that makes it a little nicer.
Okay. Cool. So
So
when you okay, yeah. Quick question, just
um,
out of
yeah,
just as I find my geekiness. So when you say like a runtime, is it akin to things like Node? I don't know. Like it's a JavaScript runtime, right?
it's a JavaScript and web runtime, so
Okay.
it'll make sense once we actually look at some of the projects.
Okay. Cool.
So we'll touch on it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to prompt us to say, hey, do you want a free account? If you run into any questions or problems along the way, this is where you can join our forums and get some help from the community. Um, for now, I'm just going to say no because I already have an account, so I don't need to do that. But we'll run into TKYT demo. And I'm just going to open up our editor and take a look at what we have over here. So this is our project. You can see we have a Vite config, a
Mm-hmm.
TS config, a Cypress config,
Okay.
fairly standard stuff if you've done any Vue development recently.
Yeah, sure.
Um, our main.ts, our app view where we're bootstrapping everything. So this is all fairly typical stuff. In fact, let's just go ahead and we're going to run this Ionic serve command, which is going to run our dev server for us. You can see here we have the app up and running on the side. It's loading up this home route. So if we actually want to check it out, we go to our routes. You can
Okay.
see this is basically the same router information that you should be used to using with Vue Router. We're
Mm-hmm.
going to our path. Here's the home or the name for it, and then the component is the actual home component. So let's go to that home component real quick. And that is home.view. So in here is where we start to see some of the Ionic components come into play.
Yeah.
We have our template. You have our page, which is essentially just our concept of, hey, this is a whole screen kind of view. This is something that should be rendered an entire page versus like a smaller building block.
Mm-hmm.
So we have our header, our toolbar, title. The components start to become a little self-descriptive.
Yeah.
We can assume toolbar is just going to be a toolbar, header is just going to be a header, fairly standard stuff. We can change the name here to home, do a
Mm.
quick little write, and it's already updated inside of our web app. So this is already a pretty fast refresh cycle.
Mm-hmm.
We have a second title over here, which we'll take a look at in a moment. And then we have this container, which is just pointing us to the docs if we need any help, which checking out the docs, what we have is a pretty cohesive, pretty big section of docs that'll go over and show you all of the components that we have to offer, plus some detailed guides on what these components can do.
Okay.
Um, there's like well over 100 components, each of them documented, showing you all of the available properties, all the available events that get emitted from them, how to style them so that way you're doing things kind of in the correct manner.
Yeah.
You could build anything with these components.
Yeah. And just to restate what was we've said before, all these components are web components, right?
All these components are web components through and through.
Awesome.
In fact, when you take a look at this alert over here, right? Our alert is basically an HTML tag, or in this case, a Vue component, and we are just having that be exposed through markup, and we can just say, "Here's our alert,"
Mm. Wow. That's
and then we can
interesting.
go to material design mode. It looks a little different, feels right for material design. Let's do
Wow.
the light mode.
Yeah.
Let me adjust for a second because that's super bright.
Yeah, that was
And
really
you can see the
challenging.
differences a little bit better in light mode, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's really, really good. That's
All right, I'm gonna
amazing stuff. Yeah, back to
go
dark
back
mode.
to
Yeah,
dark mode.
come back to the dark side.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
killer on your
Welcome.
eyes.
Yeah, welcome.
So let's get rid of this container because we don't really need it right now. We'll
Mm-hmm.
save. You see the refresh is happening real quickly, so we can
Yeah.
start to add some stuff here. For instance, let's add a button in here and say, hello from Ionic. And because this is a Vue app, we're going to import the button
Okay.
from our main package. We'll save. And then here we have the button just up and
Mm.
working. And let's try to zoom in a little bit and make sure that that is clearly visible. If you look at the click, right,
Mm-hmm.
there
Not.
should be like this little effect that happens as the button gets clicked.
Yeah.
Um, these are things that are built into Ionic that you honestly don't ever need to worry about. And
Mm.
let's take a look at how that works. Um, I have DevTools over here. We have our button. We can make this a little bit bigger. It's as big as DevTools will allow me to make the
Yeah.
font size. Um, so even though this is a Vue component inside of our editor,
Mm-hmm.
inside of the DOM, we are just a web component. So you
Oh,
can see we have the shadow content over here, which is the inner API of the
yeah.
button that we're going to go ahead and just interact with. So it'll
Yeah.
give us this inner kind of element, this inner button, so that way we get some nice focus attributes for the actual component itself. You can see we can just focus on it and tab through it.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the ripple effect, which is happening in the background when we click the button. So it'll go through, animate that, and even the ripple effect itself is a web component. So it's web component all the way down.
Yeah. That's cool. So just a little bit out of curiosity, because I've had a session on web components with Lit. Are you using Lit by any chance, or just like vanilla web components under the hood?
No, we actually have our own compiler called Stencil.
Oh,
It'll
okay.
go ahead. It's very familiar to anyone who's ever used like React, Vue, or Angular.
Okay.
Pretty similar developer API,
Mm-hmm.
and it optimizes all this for us. So that way,
Okay.
we write it once, and then we output a Vue wrapper package. If you can see importing all this from Ionic Vue. This is something
Nice.
that's automatically generated for us, so we
Yeah.
never have to write that ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Awesome stuff.
So, kind of going on a little bit, let's take a look at um, another component over here. So we'll get rid of our button. We're going to create an Ion card.
Okay.
Cards are something that I've been working with quite a bit because I'm building my own app on the side. But cards are like this super powerful component because while they seem pretty simple, they
Mm-hmm.
actually are built up of many other um, components. Uh, so they kind of are a great example of this atomic design principle. Are you
Okay.
familiar with atomic design?
Not really, but I have heard about it.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
in its simplest form, atomic design basically says you have design elements that are single purpose.
Okay.
It could be a badge, it could be content, it could be anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Alone, they do one thing, but when you start to combine them with, say, um, multiple other components, something like a card header, an ion card um, title, you get to combine them together in a way where your components end up working together to create a more cohesive design. So this card header and title can be used anywhere.
Okay.
But when you use them inside of a card, they get all this additional context so that way they can know, oh, I am a card header inside of a card itself.
Oh,
Therefore, my font size should adjust a little bit.
that makes a lot of sense.
Let's go ahead and just import those. We had Ion card content, Ion card title, Ion card header.
Mhm.
Let's go ahead and save. And we're going to close DevTools real quick and zoom out a little bit. And then here is our card. It's a very simple thing, but all of these components together, composed together, give you a richer card than you were to get if they were all on their own.
Mhm.
I mean, hell, we could even take something like, oh, Unsplash.
Okay.
Let's just get a random we'll go with this one because this looks super cool. Copy image address. Thank you to this author for their photo on Unsplash. And we're just going to go into here and we're just going to paste this image. Now you can
Wow.
see we have all the card content. The card image is filling up the entire length. If we were to move this into the card content, it gets inset a little bit. There's some padding being applied automatically, but we're going to have this right here. All this is just really handled for us, so that way we don't ever have to think about how should this layout behave or how should this work
Yeah.
outside of um, just composing it together. And then if we wanted to, we could extract this out into its own custom component and pass in some props to set everything else from there.
Oh, that's amazing stuff. Really.
So I want to go ahead and create a new route. Um, Having a single component in here is pretty boring. So we're going to create a new route. Instead of it being home, we're going to go to detail and we'll give it a dynamic ID.
Okay.
We can get rid of the route, the name for it. And it's just going to be an import. And I know at some point, um, yeah, it's dash dash use. And let's just call it detail.view. I got to create this, so it might, yeah, it'll yell at me,
Of course.
which is fine, which is great for, DevTools purposes, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely makes things a little bit uh, sketchy when you're doing a live demo. So we'll just say detail.view.
Yeah. It should be happy again soon.
In a moment.
Yeah. We did call it detail.view, right?
Yeah, I did call it detail.view.
Yeah. So why is it still not happy?
Oh,
Can you click through? Okay. You the path maybe?
nope.
Oh, path is correct.
There
Okay.
we go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Took a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get rid of this so that way we're not confusing ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go to detail, and then I'm just going to get rid of all of this stuff. Um, we'll just say H1 hello from, and we'll just say ID. ID is going to be something that exists in this component.
Yeah.
We'll get rid of the style down here because we're not going to use it. So say const. Actually, let's import use. We'll import it from view router,
Okay.
and we're going to import the use route, and we're going to say use route, and we'll grab the params, and I'm just going to say ID. So
Okay.
we'll have this ID. It's going to get returned every time we get into this page, and then we can render that inside of our component.
Okay.
So all this feels pretty familiar if you've done anything with Vue,
Yeah, it
right?
does feel familiar.
So let's go here in here, and inside of this card, let's add a router link. Actually, we'll add it to the button because we want to make sure we're doing things that are going to make sense for an accessibility reason.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll say router link, and it's going to go to detail. We'll just say 1. Go ahead and save. And here we go. We're inside 1. And I don't know if you caught that.
Yeah.
Look at the animation happening. It'll
Yeah.
animate from the bottom up to the main kind of
Mm-hmm.
context at the top of the app. So that way we feel right at home for in this case, a material design look and feel. If
Cool.
we were to go over to our user agent, we're just going to mimic iOS. First off, we have a completely different looking background, different looking card. We have this large title that happens over here. Um, we can go to our second page and we get this nice
Yes.
slide in effect that everyone is a fan of. And we can start to slide back, have
Okay,
the
there.
old route available, and then boom, we're back in our main component.
That's just amazing.
It's a really nice thing.
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
but let's go ahead, and this has been fine inside of a browser. I want to start touching on the native side, and I want to start deploying this to a native device because the sooner you get onto a native device, the quicker your kind of feedback loop becomes. So I'm going to stop our server, and I'm going to add our um, our native iOS platform. This is using Ionic Cap, which is a subcommand in our CLI. It's going to call the capacitor CLI. It's going to add iOS platform,
Mhm.
and it'll go in, install the npm dependency for us, and then it's going to go ahead and add the native project. So if we look at our file system, we now have this iOS project in here, and this is a full blown iOS um, Xcode project. We get
Interesting.
some warnings here. Sync could not run because it's missing the dist directory. So let's
Okay.
go ahead and fix that. We'll just do a quick little build. Because it's Vite, it's going to be super fast. And we're going to run this Ionic Cap sync iOS. So it'll go ahead and do our build again, but then it's going to run this found 4 capacitor plugins, and then it's going to try to go ahead and install them using something called CocoaPods. So we
Yeah.
can see we have this pods install. CocoaPods is a native iOS dependency manager. It'll go ahead and install things from a central repository into your project, which we don't really need to worry about. But once we have that done, tap open iOS. We're going to open up the native project itself. You'll see it'll open up the Xcode workspace. I promise Xcode is not terrifying. It looks terrifying if you've never used it before, but once you figure out how to navigate it, it should be
Mhm.
pretty familiar.
Yeah, I have done a little
So,
bit of mobile dev things. So with Swift, so I sort of I'm not so scared of Xcode at the moment.
oh, I'm terrified of Xcode because I have no idea what's
Yeah.
happening. When
Hmm.
random errors pop up, it is
Yeah.
just all right. I guess I'm done for today.
Hmm.
So yeah, you have this native delegate Swift. This is essentially our main entry point into iOS. We have this main storyboard where we are loading up the capacitor app or the capacitor runtime.
Hmm.
This is that native runtime that I was talking about, where it is loading up our web app, but then also exposing the hooks to the native OS features for us.
Okay.
So this is for all intents and purposes, this is our native project. We can modify this to our heart's content. We could come in here, start adding more native code if we wanted to. We could come over to our pods file to see all of the native dependencies that are being installed. You can see most of these are just references to things in node modules.
Hmm.
But we want to run this on a simulator. Um, so we could just do a build and see what we got. Okay, I picked the wrong device. Let me just go ahead. why not go all out and go for the Pro Max
Yeah. Cool.
if you're gonna do demoing something.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
here's our app, right? It's up and running. Give it a moment because it's a cold start on the simulator, and
Yeah,
doing
of course.
debug builds is questionable. But here's
Yay.
our app. We have this nice kind of, if you scroll up,
Mm-mm.
you can see we have that header kind of disappear into the main. We can go to our navigation, and we are automatically back in here. We could do a swipe to go back, but it'd be really nice if we were to have
Yeah,
a back button, right?
of course.
So if we were to think of like a traditional kind of feedback loop here, we find a change, we build, we then have to sync this all over to the native project. There's a lot of steps, a lot of time.
Yeah.
It'd be easier if we could just do Ionic Cap run iOS, patch in this dash dash live reload,
Mm.
and then pick the device we want to deploy to, and let it go ahead and just use the behind the scenes to serve our app for us.
Mm. That's smart.
So we're going to be doing all of this. Our app is now up and running in Vite and in the dev server. And just to make sure that we're doing this right, let's go to replace this with home. Awesome. Now we're back on our app, and that change happened super quickly.
Yeah.
So we can come back to our main page, and we can start adding this back button, which would consist of this ion buttons element. This is going to say, here is our array of buttons that we want to place. It's going to be on the left hand side, the start side in left to right, and on the right hand side in right to left. So it's pretty accessible in terms of um, which direction you're using for text. And we can have a back button. And this has, actually, we'll just import this real quick. And back button, ion buttons. The ion back button has this really nice default href prop or attribute where we can say, hey, if you are loaded up on this page, if you like someone sends you a push notification and it deep links into
Mm-hmm.
several routes down, if there is no history stack to go back to, just go back to the root and it'll automatically handle the animations for you. So
Yeah.
we'll save, go to our view, and hey, I just want to watch that again because that is very fun for me to watch.
Yeah.
As we start to animate back,
Mm.
you can see the back button and the title start to morph into one another, which makes this so easy to like provide the context. It feels perfect.
That is so,
Um,
that is beautiful, really.
yeah, it is. It is really beautiful. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
We
At
can
this
go.
point, you might just be showing off, but I like it anyway. It's beautiful.
Is it showing off if it actually is really cool?
I wonder.
Um, but now we
Mm-hmm.
can test. Say here is the app running in the browser. We can get rid of that
Mm-hmm. Okay.
user agent, and we can have all these changes. So we could say we can have all these changes synced across, and we can have that feedback loop of here's the app running in the browser, here's the app running in the
Mm.
actual device,
Yeah.
and we can start to get wider kind of cross-platform context changes.
Mm.
Um, I'm going to close the browser for now, but I'm
Yeah.
going to open up DevTools again because this is just an enhanced web view, right? So we can
Yeah.
still open up DevTools here. We can still inspect all of this. See, we're inside of our app. We are being able to target elements um, inside of a simulator. So we can see, yep, here's our content. Here is our card. And then let's go ahead and check out the internals of this card. You can see all the padding everything that you're used to doing inside of the browser dev tools are
Mhm.
available to us. I mean,
Mm.
heck, we can even see alert. Hello. Boom, we got an alert coming in right
Wow.
from the dev tools, right? So it's really
Yeah.
nice to see how this works.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So I'm going to go ahead and inside of this detail page, we're going to stick on here for a little bit.
Okay.
I want to touch on one of the quick little native features that we have in here, and I'm going to use something that we already have installed, and that is the splash screen. So let's go ahead and we're going to import from at capacitor. Do I have splash screen? I don't have splash screen installed.
Mm.
Oh, we're gonna go with status bar. We'll pivot real last minute.
Okay.
Um, we're doing it live.
Yes, we are.
So let's create a handler. Say toggle status
Hmm.
bar. It's going to equal an async function, and what we're going to do is just say, oh wait,
Hmm.
status bar dot hide. So we're gonna hide the status bar for, I don't know, we think 5 seconds. That seems like a
Hmm.
good amount of time, right?
Yes, it is.
So we'll just say set timeout, go to function, and then set it for 5,000 milliseconds. And then we can call await show. And because we are inside of a nested async function, we'll just add another async.
Hmm.
And then we'll add inside of here button. And then leave it to click. We'll just say toggle status bar. Uh, do some native stuff. And
Okay.
then make sure that I have Ion button imported. Cool.
Mm.
Let's go ahead and do we think this is going to work?
I think it should work, but I won't know for sure until you click that button. Let's
So
try it. Yeah.
we're going to go ahead and say do some native stuff. Status bar
Yeah.
has disappeared and give it 5 seconds and it's back. So
Wow.
we can even see we
Hmm.
have this call stack from when we called the status bar happening, what type of options are being passed in, the method that we're calling, and we can see the serialized results coming from the native runtime. So as we're debugging and starting to say access to file system,
Hmm.
we can see what is coming back before it ever even hits the UI portion of our app. So we have a faster and deeper understanding of how things are working here.
Mm. That's just amazing.
And then if we want to actually look at some of this, like we could even go in here, see development pods. Let's look at the status bar. Hey, we have all of the different code, all of the different things happening in here. Like, let's see, we can have our hide. So this is a
Hmm.
function we just called. We are saying set status bar visibility to false and then resolve that promise.
Mm.
Show, we're going to set that to be true and then resolve the promise. So from the native side, we're not actually doing a whole lot of work in
Yeah.
this particular case. But from the web side, it feels like we're just doing typical programming, right? We're just
Yeah.
set hide, set show.
Brilliant. Like, I think this is a very nice DX because you're able to expose the native APIs as just JavaScript, right? Just like the same way we do like document dot get element by ID or something. So you're
Yeah.
tapping into the native stuff with JavaScript. That's dope.
And then
Mhm.
with all of that together, like we're not limiting you to what you can use. Like I'm still pulling in view router to handle passing in um, dynamic params from a route change.
Mm-hmm.
I could access Pina if I want to do some state management. All
Yeah,
that stuff still applies here, and you can just add it to your app and still build a native app.
that's perfect. Really. Yeah. So the native story is 100% on point. I like it, and it
Yeah,
doesn't sacrifice the DX. It still feels like we're still doing web stuff, which is the entire idea. I love it.
yeah, that's the whole point.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see like the core APIs that we have available. We're going back to the dark mode because eyes. Um, we have things like app launcher, action
Mhm.
sheet, browser. We have a full list of plugins which we think are core features. Basically, if one of these were missing, um, you're kind of missing out on the whole platform. Like we even have a Google Maps plugin if
Hmm.
that's something that you wanted to work with.
Yeah.
Um, but I will highlight this huge capacitor community plugin or organization.
Hmm.
This is something where all of the additional kind of extra plugins can exist. So we have one here that a gentleman is maintaining called SQLite. If you wanted to have a full SQLite implementation inside of your app for whatever reason, you can use this, add it into your app, and then have the full SQLite API available to you. If you want to
Wow.
have a secondary app icon, like be able to just open your app and then set the icon to something different just
Yeah.
because you could do that as well. All of this,
Yeah.
all of this could be yours.
Hmm. That's amazing stuff, really.
So it's a pretty vibrant community of additional things that people are trying to build. Live camera preview, analytics, speech recognition, then the core APIs that we provide and have dedicated docs on how to integrate into your app. So that is Capacitor. That is Ionic and Vue. That is
Yeah.
building a mobile app with web technologies.
Hmm. That's amazing stuff. So I know we're at time, and you really like I've seen a lot. I am impressed. I think the DX is great as promised. It is good. So one last thing is maybe so how will the deployment flow feel like distribution? Yeah. So that's the thing. So after building my app, how do I ship it to
Hmm.
my users? Like yeah.
Very, very good question. So you have your several ways of deploying it, right? You could connect this repo to any static hosting provider, Vercel, Netlify, Firebase, and you can deploy the web app that way,
Okay.
which will work great for the web portion of it. For the native side of things, you could go ahead and do a full build and archive here inside of Xcode.
Okay.
But we also have this third-party service that we've built out called Appflow. It'll
Mm-hmm.
go ahead, it'll allow you to do a full build based on commits, based on like a CI/CD
Oh.
approach to doing everything. It'll manage all of your environments. It'll go ahead, it will do a build for you, have that be available. You could then deploy it to iTunes Connect or what Apple App Connect,
Mm-hmm.
Test Flight, Google Play, Beta,
Mm.
whatever. And a real big feature here is that if you are a dev who does not have a Mac,
Yeah.
we handle that for you. So that way you don't even need to have a Mac to be able to do iOS builds, which is really, really cool.
That is neat. So yeah.
Um, yeah, that's all of it. Another cool feature is
Mm-hmm.
if you, for some reason, make a mistake and you messed up an API endpoint, you can do a live update of your app um, on device without ever having to submit for a re-review, which is a really really nice feature.
Wow. How
So yeah,
that is intriguing, really. I'm gonna take a look at Appflow. It does feel this is very robust. I see there's an active community. I see the tech itself is really, really cool with Capacitor, with Ionic itself. I think I love the DX and the experience, and I feel like you don't have any concerns if you're going to build like mobile apps with Ionic and Vue. So that's amazing. So yeah, thank you so much, Mike. We are at time. So um, as we round up, do you have anything you want to share finally? And also for being my teacher for this TKYT session, you get to plug anything, like plug away. You have that like plug
What
away.
I would plug our community Discord. So
Okay.
if you're a huge fan of Discord, like I know a lot of people are,
Mm-hmm.
ionic.link/Discord is our way of joining. It's super active over there. There's tons of people who are just there to lend a hand if you need it, but
Mm-hmm.
also just to show off what you're building and provide words of encouragement, which is, I think, always the best thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, join our Ionic Discord. We also have our first in-person conference happening later this year
Oh,
called Ioniconf. If you want to
cool.
check it out,
Yeah.
ionic.io/Ioniconf.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be super fun. 2 days of just learning all things Ionic and web dev related.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing a bunch of people over there.
Yeah, awesome. I'm gonna add those links to the Discord and also to IonicConf in the description. Thank you so much, Mike. Where can folks reach you, after seeing this session? I wanna like shout out to Mike for an amazing Ionic demo or something.
You could find me on Twitter for the time being as M Hartington, first initial last name.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also on Blue Sky. If you got an invite code, mhartington.io over there.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm pretty much the same name everywhere.
Yeah, you're very consistent. I love it. So yeah,
I try to be.
yeah, that's good. So yeah, thank you, Mike. I love this session. I am really pumped about the mobile development story with Ionic and plugging your framework, but for this one, we use Vue. So yeah, thank you for your time and
Thank you so much. It's been great.
awesome.